with the FEPS and other programs. And you're right, many people were burnt by the city and state when they canceled the Advantage program. And it created some negative energy that I think hurt many of these city programs. And it takes too long to get payments in. And the city used so many reasons for non-payments. We need to shorten that period of time. We need to remove the bureaucracy. And if we have to take corrective actions on landlords, then let's do so. But it should not come at the expense that you're hurting the tenants who are there. And we need to reinstitute the Advantage type program that help tenants who are in need. And as I indicated last week, we saw that there was a number of brokers and agents who were not showing those who had vouchers, showing them apartments. I believe that is unacceptable. We need to first staff up the Human Rights Commission. Then we need to send a loud message to those agents and brokers. You do it one time, your license is suspended for a year. You do it 2 times, you're suspended for 2 years. You do it 3 times, you're suspended for life. And we need to increase the fines with the landlords. One time, 10,000, do it twice, 20,000, you do it 3 times, 30,000. We must make abusing people and denying housing too expensive to do so. Right now, it is not.
I'm the only candidate in this race who has actually testified in front of Congress about the need for the eviction moratorium to be extended, the need for billions of dollars of rental assistance. And in fact, I worked side by side with President Biden and Vice President Harris, with our leaders in Congress, to make sure that we got almost $50 billion in rental assistance in the COVID relief packages that have passed over the last few months. And so I would ensure, because I have those deep relationships and knowledge, that the eviction moratorium is extended for as long as it's needed in this pandemic. And I would work to get that rental assistance at the federal level quickly to the ground, to families like yours, to make sure that you're not ending up evicted or losing your housing, because that flow of federal dollars is incredibly important for consistency and to be able, as you know, to pay higher rents, because too often the city voucher isn't sufficient to actually be able to find decent housing. So I would make sure that we're significantly increasing the federal funding that we have available, but I would also increase city funding as well, raise the payment standards, and ensure that we are paying on a regular basis so that no one is evicted because the city isn't doing its part and paying the rent. But the last thing I would say also, and you mentioned with landlords, it's critically important that we provide everybody in this city who's at risk of losing their housing with the housing counseling and services that they need to be able to be informed, to reach out to landlords. But we also need the legal assistance, because while some landlords will want to do the right thing, we know others are simply looking to get rid of residents, don't want them in the first place. And we need to ensure that we're enforcing the fair housing rules that I created at the federal level, demanding that landlords take, whether it's city vouchers or federal vouchers, and that when there is eviction threatened, that we have the legal resources to make sure to fight back and keep you in your home.
They're 2 very big questions, but I'm going to start with the city should pay its bills. It actually is legally required to pay its bills within 30 days. And that should not be on the tenant. You know, they should be, there should be coordination with the landlord in the city around ensuring that payment is made. And we need to make sure that the rules are steady, because you make long-term decisions around where you're going to live. I'm glad you have granite countertops, by the way. You know, I guess it's good for baking. But you know, this is where I don't understand why the bureaucracy is causing there to be a hang up on paying your bills. It's one of the things that actually the controller's office is supposed to do, is make sure the bills get paid. if there are contracts in place, and obviously there is. On the issue of when the eviction moratorium ends, and it will eventually end, this is where we really need to bring together landlords and tenants and the financial services industry, because just paying the tenant to pay the landlord to pay the mortgage to somebody who's been making money on Wall Street isn't like a great use. I don't find a great use of our money as a city. But there is good news in the federal stimulus for rent relief. And I think that infusion will really help ensure that we don't have a homeless and eviction crisis. There is an opportunity for our landlords and tenants to come together and reset the bar, because it's not as if there are loads of tenants out there who are like, oh yeah, I can pay more. Nobody had any money during the pandemic. So everyone has been in that boat.
For one, I want to make certain that we can do whatever we can to extend the eviction moratorium. The other thing that we need to do is to make certain that the vouchers have currency, that they have the value that it states that they have. And we need to make sure that the landlords know that. And where we see instances where they're not taking the vouchers, we need to go in and enforce that they take the vouchers. And I'd be prepared to make certain that I did an assessment of where this was most, where there was more discrimination, the vouchers were not accepted. We also need to make certain that we got rental subsidies, right? So vouchers, rental subsidies, legal assistance, to make certain that when any one of the tenants is discriminated against, that we bring the full effect of the law against the landlords who decide not to take the vouchers. And we got to pay the vouchers. We got to pay them on time. And part of this is a bureaucracy. So if the vouchers are not paid for on time, then the landlords get that more skeptical, whereas, more discrimination comes in. So we have to repair this, Ms. Rhonda. It shouldn't be the case you got a voucher and people don't accept the voucher because they don't think it's worth what the voucher says it's worth. We got to make it worth what it should be, what we say it's worth.
So, so thank you for, you did your homework. You read that I said throwing away the playbook. So here's what I mean when I say that, right? It goes to what I was talking about when I was talking about the luxury developers, right? And this being a choice, right? We can make a choice. Our leadership and our city can make a choice that we're not going to keep catering to developers and these luxury units. And we're not going to keep letting the rent increase. We are going to refocus the way we do housing and real estate in New York City. And the thing that's going to be at the center in that new idea is people. And we're going to center and prioritize everybody getting housing, affordable, permanent housing. That's the first step. But the second step is, again, because we can't flip a switch and do this overnight, is that we have to recognize that there are people right now who are living in units that have vouchers or who have vouchers and are seeking units. So in the meantime, as we transition and we change the way we do housing, we also have to make sure that it's possible for those folks that have vouchers to have vouchers that actually make it possible for them to have, to be able to afford to live in New York City apartments. So that means increasing the value of the vouchers to make sure that they're market rates and that they're able to be used within the current system the way it exists right now. It also means, in terms of the moratorium, it means working with, my particular focus would be on small landlords, because in many ways, the small landlords are the ones that actually look like us. They're Black and brown. And for many of them, their home is the only way that they have to basically gain any wealth, right? And so we want to make sure that the small grandma and grandpa homes are not at risk. So we have to provide some sort of mortgage relief to those people as well, so that they can keep their homes while giving the renters the break that they need. And then the third thing I'll say, and this is not popular because, my ideas, I'm not a traditional politician, so my ideas are radical compared to everybody else's. I think the for-profit banks need to take their fair share of the hit right now. They've been profiting off of our city and off of our communities for decades. And it's time that they actually put some skin in the game?
We're going to have a couple of things. First of all, the shelter allowance is inadequate when you're trying to get a 1-bedroom apartment, and I would raise it at least to $1,700 to $2,000. If you really want to help people get housing, you have to be realistic as to where the housing market is. In terms of people who are now in housing where they can't pay the rent, and by the way, it is a very real crisis that the next mayor is going to have to come to terms with. The truth is, through no fault of anybody, this pandemic forced the city and the country to shut down the economy, and many people lost their jobs. When you think about where this city was pre-pandemic, we had a 3.4% unemployment rate. We had added 970,000 jobs to the economy in 10 years. And once COVID came in March a year ago, that unemployment rate went to 20%. In communities of color, it was 25%. Young people actually had hit unemployment rates of 35% and up. And those 970,000 jobs, we lost 900,000. So that means there are people who simply are not going to be able to pay the back rent, and right now are unemployed. So we need to take some of that $6.1 billion in stimulus money that we're going to get, and more that will follow. We need to create programs to cancel rent for people who we create a program for. And for small landlords, we need to create mortgage forgiveness and align the banks and the mortgages and the tenants and landlords. And that negotiation and those programs have to emanate from City Hall. I believe I'm the best qualified to build that consensus and build those programs, because we cannot have mass eviction on the streets of New York. And if I'm mayor, that's not going to happen.